Hello everyone, this is Tariq Khalil, a marketeer. Whatever I learn about marketing, I forward the knowledge to you. Today in this episode, we're going to learn about what is user engagement in mobile apps and the 5 metrics you should keep an eye on to track your progress. In addition, to answer your questions like what is user engagement, how am I going to measure user engagement, and what is an active user? And before we begin, there are some abbreviations that needs to be clarified before we proceed. MAU, monthly active users, WAU, weekly active users, and DAU, daily active users. Let's proceed. Let's get started by defining what is user engagement. As described by Lincoln Murphy, a user engagement is whenever the user is realizing the value from your website, app, service, or product. Next up is identifying what are the user engagement actions for your app. You need to figure out what are your users' actions value, what actions they are consistently performing. Then you will be able to tell which are your user engagement actions. To help give you an idea of what can be a user engagement action, here are a few examples. Let's say you have an online billing app. Then whenever a user creates an invoice, he shares an invoice or receives a payment, then those actions they have value for the user and for your business. These are the user engagement actions. As for e-commerce app, add to cart, complete purchase. For a car rental app, book, pay, and confirm payment. Now you might ask yourself, why should you care about user engagement actions? Because if the users are getting value from your user engagement actions, then they are going to stay for longer. The longer they stay, the higher their user retention, leading to more revenue for your business, meaning greater lifetime value so you can afford a higher cost of customer acquisition, bringing more opportunity for users to refer each other, all of which leading to growth. Also remember that every business is different. Don't go just blindly follow any user engagement actions just because you were told so or you were told by your friends. Every business has its own actions that brings value for the business and the users. Once you figure these out, focus on them. Now let's get into metrics. Metric number 1 that we're going to be talking about is the monthly, weekly, and daily active users. Those are whenever the users were active in a specific certain period of time. So you define what is active for you. What is an active user for your application? If you're a car rental app, is it a books a car? This means an active user. Maybe it's just a sign in. You define what is active for your business and work based on that. Now that this is cleared out, we go to user stickiness, the metric number 2. In user stickiness, you track the DAU over the MAU mostly. There are multiple other ratios that you can track, such as the DAU over WAU, but most of the time businesses go for DAU over MAU. This will tell you how often your unique users are revisiting your app within a certain period of time. In this case, we are tracking DAU over MAU. So let's say your user is visiting your app 15 times in 30 days. This means that your DAU over MAU ratio will be 50%. This will give you an indicator of how often your users are revisiting your app. This is also important because the more users revisit your app, the higher retention rate. Higher retention rate means greater lifetime value, then leading to more growth. Metric number 3, day 1, day 7, day 30 retention rate. Now, why these 3 days? Most businesses, they focus on these 3 days because they will give a broad indicator of how good of performing their application is. You can focus on day 2, day 19, day 18, whatever, but it will eventually lead your team to lose their focus. I strongly advise tracking only these 3 days. Now, what are those 3 days? Day 1 is when your unique user launch your app. Now, day 7 will give you an indicator of that unique user, did he revisit your app or not? Same goes for the day 30. Why you should focus on that? This will give you a good indicator of that your users, they are finding value in your app. Now, how can you make sure from that metric that if your performance is good or not? On here, you can see the retention rate curve. Now, the retention rate curve, it needs to be higher than the x-axis baseline. The curve needs to be always up. Now, the higher it is, the better the performance it is. As you can also notice, there's a huge drop off after day 1. This is completely normal, but you should maintain a good, healthy curve sustainably and keep on increasing the gap between the x-axis baseline. Now, if by day 30, the curve is hitting 0%, this is a strong signal that you urgently need to improve your user engagement actions in the app. You need to figure out what the problem is as soon as possible and fix it. Now for metric number 4, it's the week 1 user retention. It's one of the most important metrics that you should focus on. Why? It is so important. Because it's when the most users are lost. Over 60% of the users are lost 7 days after they first sign up. The first 7 days, they have the biggest impact on the retention curve. Because whatever improvements that you do on the week 1 retention curve, they will carry on the rest of the retention curve. Now, how to improve this metric? It's all about figuring out how to get the new users to find the value of your app within the first 7 days. The faster you get your user to experience the value of your app within the first 7 days, the more likely they are going to stay with you and revisit your app. Now finally, metric number 5, we call these the tripwire metrics. Now usually when users get in trouble, they don't ask for help. And if they don't get help after those first 7 days, they will most likely not come back. You need to figure out a way in order to know when are those tripwire metrics are triggered. So to go ahead and engage with them to minimize the loss of users in hopes of retaining those users. Now there are 2 ways to figure out engaging users and non-engaging users. Let's say, just for example, also remember for your business it might differ. Now for the generic case, number 1 is, let's say, a car booking app. The user that booked a car visited the app 5 times a day, spent a time session of 3 minutes and 57 seconds. Then we have a definition of what an engaging user will be. Now let's go ahead and look at the non-engaging user that does not book a car. The definition for non-engaging user would be something like, he visited the app 1 time a day, he spent a time session of between 30 seconds to 40 seconds, and he didn't book a car. If this happens frequently, then we have a definition of what's an engaging user and a non-engaging user. Now you can go ahead and ask your back-end team to segment those users and give you those users in a list after 7 days, and then you go ahead and target those users using email, SMS, in-app messaging, whatever you prefer. This is the end of the episode. Thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.